right. I want to welcome everybody into the Fifth Dimension podcast. For today's episode, I am joined by the one and only Pam Barosh, who is a medium, intuitive healer, and spiritual coach. Pam, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Fifth Dimension.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Your show sounds awesome. I just love the name of it. Super cool.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. And uh, we're hitting about a year and we're almost at episode 100. So the fifth dimension is, I'm thinking maybe I need to make it the sixth dimension
Yeah,
or the seventh dimension.
it's funny that you mentioned that because right before I came on, I was thinking, what dimension are we in right now?
Collectively. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's a great
yeah.
question. I mean, do you think you have like, do you think that's an answerable question? Like in
Well,
terms
I
of,
mean, I think it varies because I feel like we kind of move in and out of things.
yeah.
So like even in one day, we could be like in different dimensions all over the place. And if you think of the concept of multi-dimensional and
Mhm.
infinite, then it's like you could be anywhere. So if we
Yeah.
kind of start to see ourselves as like super expansive and we're spirits too, not just the other side. So like we're all connected and contacting each other all the time.
Right. Right. Definitely. So it's good to not be saying I'm living in the fifth dimension because really we're going all over the place. We're bouncing from uh, across dimensions, which is a beautiful concept. And I mean, I'd love to start the show by sort of hearing about,
Mhm.
where you're coming from on this lovely Tuesday evening. You can maybe speak to your own awakening to the spiritual path, or sort of, um, how you came to the journey of healing, and where you came. I guess how you're approaching, to where you are right now.
Yeah, I think earlier in my life, I was completely unaware of all of these things. I think I would see it from afar
Mhm.
and I would be like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And sometimes I would look into it. Maybe I would read a book on a certain topic, but then I didn't really bring it into my life as much. I just kind of looked at it here and there.
Mhm.
But when I went through a time when I had suffered this illness that really wrecked my body and it made me slow down and be in silence. So that was my forced meditation.
Mm.
So basically, the other side said, okay, that's enough. And now we're going to get you on your path. And in that silence, I found that I could hear and sense other beings. It started with angels and then it became, spirits. And then eventually it was other ascended beings and just whoever needed to come in. It could be like a collective energy, group
Mhm.
energy, council energies. I just became really open to it. I just thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. I didn't really have anything else to do because I was in that silent space.
Mhm.
So it was my form of communicating with somebody that could understand what I was going through and how do I heal in that moment. So that's what happened is they began to bring me messages to open up to what I can do, my superpowers, if you will, but also to trust in healing and to realize that there is something beyond the physical, that we are spirits and we have this light energy that we create from what we focus on and what our beliefs are and how we hold love in our hearts and how we connect to each other. So
Mhm.
it showed me the physical part was reflected from that. That was the origin. Our light is the origin. And if we could turn that light on more and shine it brighter and just be stronger in that and not have anything affect that, just let things kind
Mm.
of drift away from that, whatever would come at us that might tear us down normally. Because there's a lot of stuff that bombards us, like things from even people around us to the media to whatever our expectations may be,
Mm.
and you start to take all that on. Oh, I should believe that. Oh, that's what I should do. I should follow that path. Not really listening to what is that internal compass of that light. And it's hard at first to make that switch and say, okay, I'm going to listen to myself now and be in this
Right.
power. And of course, for me, it went from I'm doing something completely different. I'm going to this, and now I'm talking to beings, right? And people I'm sure are not going to look at me funny or anything, right? It's a very strange thing. So I don't necessarily, when I went through that process, I didn't talk to everybody about it at first. I kind of kept it to myself because I wanted to keep it in that pure state of exploration for myself,
Hmm.
and then begin to see what else was out there, who else was in my tribe, who else was into these kinds of things, and what else could I learn, and where was my path, where else could it go? Because at first when I started, I thought it would be okay, I'm going to write a lot, I'm going to do energy stuff, but then it became other things too. I learned a lot about crystals, and then I studied hypnotherapy, and I just started just learning anything I could to kind of round it out and make it like, what else is there? Because I want to understand about our consciousness as
Mm.
much as I possibly can, because if I speak about it, if I write about it, I want to be able to come from different perspectives so everybody gets a little bit of something from it, and it's not just one lane, like it has a more expansive, inviting feel to it.
Right, definitely. And you hit on so many um, great and relatable points and areas that I've really focused on as well. In terms of, first talking about healing and sort of waking up to this fact that we are spiritual beings first. Like, I think our innate like nature, it's almost sort of paradoxically been
Hmm.
disconnected because I don't think we're ever truly disconnected from it. It's just sort of really shoved down and just based on conditioning and ideas that we're told about the world, and all these external forces kind of come in and we define our lives around that.
Right.
I mean, would you say that this, um, the capability to talk to and listen to guides and angels and receive these, messages, this is something that would you say that's something that exists within all of us? And what would you say is that first step in terms of uh, listening in and finding that guidance? And I think for a lot of people, they have that fear of maybe they're not doing it right. Like early on in my spiritual journey, there was a lot of uncertainty and self doubt. Like I had to really unpack. So, what might those first steps look for people?
Well, I think it's important that we just kind of be open to whatever it may be. Like for me, it was hearing myself.
Mhm.
It's okay to not figure out what it is, just be in the feeling of what is not in the noise of life, right? So, what is it that brings you more of a peace inside? And the more you get into your own peacefulness, the more you can actually hear. Because it's funny because
Mhm.
we try to hear so much with our external hearing, but we're so busy and our minds are full of thoughts and worries and all these things to do. So, where do we really leave space to connect? I do
Mhm.
believe that we all are connecting every day. Now, we may receive in different ways. Some people might just get a certain message, a word that comes to them, a song plays on the radio, or somebody tells them something. That could be their way of receiving a message. They don't necessarily have to tap into a certain energy or have a certain belief or, sit in prayer for a long time. It's just they may be receiving it in other ways, just noticing things. So if somebody wants to bring that in more, it would be just focusing on what brings you to that state of peace, what will calm you and kind of remove you from all the things that affect you and lets you sit in your own thoughts, and you'll start to hear your internal voice. You'll hear your higher self. You'll start to hear maybe spirits that are around you, spirit guides. And I'm not saying like hear, but I'm saying like sense them in some way. Like you could hear them, yes, but you might also get a knowing about something. You're
Mhm.
sitting there and you just know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. We do this a lot anyway. I mean, when we're making decisions all the time and we kind of ponder about it, we're feeling it out, and then we get to the conclusion, we just make a decision at some point because we just feel drawn to a certain thing. And sometimes we don't know why we're
Right.
drawn to go to a place or take a certain job or whatever it is. And it's because spirit's kind of trying to nudge us. And if you ever get that feeling, like somehow you'll get that tiny feeling like it's more of a dread or more of a joy. So if it feels like it's, ooh, I don't know if I that doesn't feel like the greatest thing, but I guess I'll do it. That is telling us maybe not the best choice. It's not going to necessarily always be detrimental, but it's just telling us that's not the best choice for us. There's a higher choice that would get us more on our path. We tend to drift a little bit here and there. That's our free will, of course, right?
Right.
So we get distracted, like we're like kids in the candy store and we're like looking around. What other candy is there? Let me go over there for a while.
Right.
But really we always come back. I almost think of it like a rubber band. And
Mm.
so what will happen is we'll drift away for a while and then it'll just snap back and something will bring us back. Like maybe something happens to us and we're like, oh yeah, I meant to do those meditations, or I've been thinking about doing that thing differently. Now somebody just mentioned it again. I think I'm going to go do it. It just takes people some time. It may take them longer. It's everybody has their own timing in accepting whatever their gifts are, and just knowing that there's no wrong answer, there's no wrong way to do it. I also tell people a lot, it's very important to tell yourself positive statements about that. So
Mm.
if you say, I can't see anything clairvoyantly, if you start to think, I can't be a clairvoyant, I can't see images, then you will not see images, because that's what you're telling yourself over and over, and you're kind of blocking it, and there's a fear there, so it can't get through. Spirit doesn't want to work through fear. Spirit
Right.
wants to work through love and acceptance. So the closer you can get to love and feel that, the more you will connect to them easier. And just know that you can trust. Like, let's say you got a message and you weren't even sure. You're like, I think I got this feeling of something or a word that came through, and you're starting to question it. The minute you start to question it, stop right there. That is your mind trying to analyze it, set it aside and say, well, what if it was true?
Mm.
What if it was true? And then go with it and kind of play with that idea for a bit. And it's almost like you're being a little kid and you're just playing with the idea of something dreamy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And letting it become the magical thing that it can be. And you say, well, what if? And then what if the next thing happened and the next thing, and you create something from it. They're trying to help us to manifest what we desire, to
Mm.
get into our best selves, to have the best life possible. So that's why they're giving us those little things.
Right. Definitely. And you hit on, again, on so many beautiful points that really resonate. And I think it all comes down to this self trust and building this
Mm-hmm.
self love. And our minds, they're great for problem solving. We have them for a reason. But when it comes to connecting with spirit, a lot of times they get in the way because they look for that logical, like almost material answer uh, to what it is that we're looking for. And a lot of times there isn't going to be that clear cut, this is what we need to do because of X, Y, and Z. It's more of just the feeling. And for myself, I found that uh, that trust was always for a long time lacking, and it was until I started connecting in with the heart space and really tuning into the heart that I realized that the only thing that was the only reason I wasn't trusting myself is because I wasn't letting myself trust myself. There was a fear involved in that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's comes from our conditioning. Maybe we didn't receive
Mm-hmm.
certain nurturing and, affirmations that we are worthy of our purpose and worthy of our desires and abundance. So I think, connecting in with that heart space and love energy is I think the most powerful spiritual practice and self-love practice. And for me, that's what I've seen, really focusing in on that love is it makes everything else sort of flow. It puts you in a state of being as opposed to needing to like do, and you can very
Right.
much just live in that heart space. I mean, have you found certain ways to tune into the heart space that you could speak of, and how that sort of process can really feel? And then, is there, I feel like there's going to naturally be a lot of
Mm-hmm.
vulnerability involved in that as well, the willingness to dive into the heart. But could you speak to the heart space and this
Yeah.
cultivating this loving energy?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because The fifth dimension is all about the heart space
Yes,
and being
absolutely.
in that connection to source and oneness. And everything I talk about, when I talk about healing, I always say it's all about love energy. I
Mhm.
don't just see it as energy, I say it's love energy. Do you see how that changes the way that has a certain vibration?
Right.
You're already putting the intention into it. And then people can see it and feel it and they're like, oh, okay,
Right.
that's a connector. I understand that. I think a lot of it is, like you said, kind of putting, your thoughts away and letting your guard down. Sometimes the simplest things, the strangest things that we wouldn't even think would connect us to our heart space are what connects us, right?
Mhm.
So it could be anything. So for me, one of the big things that helps me is dancing, and
Mhm.
just dancing in my backyard and or wherever, and that actually releases me out of my mind, and it doesn't have to be a certain thing. It's just being in the movement, like you said, being in that flow. That's exactly what I feel. And in that moment, I feel like I'm not just here, I'm on the other side. I'm in that place of who I really am as a spirit. It's such an amazing feeling. And then if I'm outside when I'm doing this, I'm connected to the earth and the earth grid, and I'm connected to nature, and if there's like birds around me or whatever's happening. So it really grounds me, but it also connects me to that spiritual realm at the same time. And it releases, it's a good releaser for the way that we hold on to stagnant energy. And
Mm.
that stagnation, a lot of times, is what causes our heart space to close off, especially if we're going through stuff. Maybe we're frustrated with something, we got mad at something. Anger obviously is not good for the heart. And
Right.
if we're having a hard time, maybe forgiving something, moving past something difficult, that closes it off more. We try to protect, but the protection over a long period of time just drains the heart more and doesn't allow you to reconnect, to kind of fill up that light again, how we're talking about shining brighter through the heart space. So it's really just finding something. What is it that brings you to that place where you just let go? And
Mm.
everybody's different. It could be listening to music, it could be, painting, it could be doing some kind of sport, whatever it is. Everybody's different. For me, also, it's writing.
Mm.
Writing, I sink into it, and it's like I lose concept of time, and I begin to feel like I don't know who I am anymore. Now I'm so connected to spirit. It's like I'm not just a physical being in that space when I'm writing. I'm actually writing from them, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. This is very inspirational and healing. There's a lot of healing words that come through when I do that. So for me, that helps me to release anything that I've held on to, but it also helps me to heal if there's something that needs to be healed. So I
Mm.
always go back to those kinds of activities, things that speak to me. Everybody's a little different, with that.
Right, definitely. And I think it requires, especially somebody who, is maybe new to it and doesn't have one of those creative outlets, and or requires some experimentation, if you will. Like I always say, if you feel called towards something, like if somebody has always wanted to learn like the guitar, for example,
Mhm.
then that could be a calling to the good, for healing, for connecting with your heart space through music by learning the guitar. Like I think it just sort of, you almost like a leap of faith is required to trust yourself to find these outlets and find these different ways. And you mentioned dancing, and that was actually dancing was something that really brought me out of my uh, comfort zone. One of
Mhm.
the first times I joined this, it was like a West Coast swing dance class in college, and it was a partner dance, and it was this modern, like upbeat, like fun, playful dance. And the person who was teaching it was actually very um, I had him on the podcast because he's a psychologist, and he's very much talks about uh, spiritual connecting inward and learning about the self. And so he really connected that with dance and learning about sort of ourselves intuitively through play. And I think
Mhm.
it really nurtures the inner child to do these playful activities to heal, to bring out our imagination. Because I think
Mhm.
imagination and creativity is really what's going to heal us individually. Like it's our way to express ourselves, and it can, if everybody begins to really engage in that, that can create a collective that is sort of fueled by these principles as well, and you get that domino effect. I wanted to ask, because you mentioned bringing up sort of stagnant energy as well. Um, an area that I've really focused on is sort of my whole chakra system and learning about the different chakras and the energy points that we have in our body. And I actually realized fairly recently, I don't think in a single podcast I've had anyone talk about the chakra system, which the fact that we're at almost episode 100, it kind of astounds me because it's been something that's prevalent in my own life. But could you speak to like energy, like the flow of energy within our bodies, and how sort of our chakras, I suppose what they are for anybody who isn't
Mhm.
super familiar, and how sort of energy, that like natural flow that energy has in our bodies, and maybe how it can stagnate, and uh, ways we can uh, to allow it to continue to flow, I suppose.
Yeah. So the chakras, we do have the main seven chakras that we talk about. There are other chakras, but these are the ones that we work with our physical body a lot more.
Right.
And so when you're saying you're in the flow and you're flowing, that means all the energy is able to move through the way it should. We start to have things that affect the chakras. They're energy centers. So basically, they're just different. The way I see it is different connection points to our spiritual realm in a sense. So it's like coming from there, but also our physical space as well, and how we feed ourselves. So the different chakras, what will happen is if you have certain emotional things that are happening, that can kind of get locked in that space and repeat over and over and over again, or maybe drain that area. And then if it does, that means that there could be a block where there's not a flow. So let's say your solar plexus, which is in the center, would be like if that was affected and you were feeling like, I don't feel good about myself, if you kept saying that or having different things that were affecting you, like maybe people were telling you certain things that put you down, you would feel almost like that feeling in your gut, like somebody punched you in the gut, right?
Hmm.
And you might have GI system, like digestive things going on connected to that because of the location. So a lot of times, if you have those symptoms, it's telling you there's something going on with your solar plexus. Now, if that's blocked, what can happen is in the lower chakras and the upper chakras can't communicate as well. So you can have a lot of things wrong just because of that one being in the center. Also, the same thing with the heart chakra because it feeds off so many of the other chakras as well, and it's also just a way that we feel like at peace and that state of being okay, and that we're connected to something. So when our heart chakra is off, we might get too sad or go inside of ourselves too much rather than get reach for help or get support.
Hmm.
And so once we get grounded with our root chakra with the earth, and we spend more time outside and like get into that grounded energy, and then we also feel good about ourselves and we have our heart space cleared out more, then as we go through those lower chakras all the way up, we get into the upper chakras, and this is where we start to open up more of our intuition. So that's why it's important not to try to open your third eye chakra, for instance, that much if you haven't healed the other ones,
Hmm.
because you could get it coming through too strong. And then you might have a lot of nightmares. You might have different symptoms. You might have a lot of emotions that come through too much. It's better to heal the other ones so that when you do get to that point, you're ready for it. You're more aware of what that means and how to connect to it.
Right. Definitely. And I think you mentioning the third eye, I feel like it's almost the idea of opening your third eye has very much entered into the cultural mainstream in a few different
Hmm.
ways, and it's like a popular um, term. And I think the reason for that is, I actually experienced that early on in my own journey. Sort of had this awakening, and like my third eye opened, and in like I really focused in on that because I wasn't
Hmm.
very intuitively aware of, like, I felt certain blockages, but I didn't really know too much about the different energy points. And so I was like, oh, I just want to get spiritual, I'm going to open my third eye. And it led to certain certain different things, mental health and physically, and there was a lot of sort of compounding effects of that. And it wasn't until I was able to actually, really ground myself and learn
Mhm.
about the rest of my body that the it was I'm much more able to receive sort of the messages that come from that because I've done the other healing. But it's almost as if uh, a lot of people, I think, and I don't like to generalize, but it's speaking from my own experience. I uh, thought initially, spirituality and these, uh, learning about intuition was sort of all about connecting to the spirit realm and traveling
Mhm.
to the fifth dimension and
Yeah.
doing. It's almost sort of like it gets a reputation. Like a lot of people view that as like, whoa, that's like crazy. I want to transcend time and space, and it's just like a,
Yeah.
a very interesting mainstream thing that's come up. But it's through these other grounding concepts that it can almost be very much um, integrated and healing. So it's
Yeah.
and
It's important to ground like you're talking about. I think the thing that's missed is anchoring to the earth. Because
definitely,
if you're what happens if you're in your third eye or your crown chakra a lot, it's actually not good. It's not balanced. You're not
mm,
anchored. And so you can really get sick from that. It can cause a lot of problems. And sometimes what will happen is if you've ever noticed somebody that's not grounded, they'll run into things a lot. You know what I mean? They'll be more
yeah,
clumsy, or in their driving, they could drive strangely because it's the same thing. They're not grounded. A lot of strange things will happen to them. They could have issues with their head, mental issues. So that's why it's always important to really ask for that first. Like if you're doing a meditation, if you're trying to connect, say, okay, I want to anchor to the earth. Imagine your feet or roots going into the ground, and then that will help you to stabilize. And when you come out of it, it's also important to think about that too. How am I grounded or not? Because I do channeling. And so a lot of times, because I do those things, it does take me pretty far out there, right?
hmm
It's all over the place. So I get pretty high in a frequency to where I come back and I'm like, whoa, I'm in my body now. I gotta figure this out and figure out how to get back. And so depending on how long I'm doing that, I may have to ground longer or really take time to get back. But
hmm
I'm aware of it. Not everybody may be aware of that. Just, just if you're doing meditations, if you're going to try to connect, try to come back and be in the real space, the physical plane. And I think that we all can get into our upper chakras more, but we just need to allow our life to have more of that love and peace first. So
right,
it comes in a way that we're open to what needs to come in and we're not forcing it so much. I know a lot of people, like you were talking about, going into these other places, like sometimes they'll be like, oh, I need to levitate, or,
right,
I need to accomplish the next thing that's super spiritual or whatever. But honestly, it really comes from being first in your physical body. You must accept that you are in a physical body, and that is your vessel. So if you're taking care of your physical body, then all those other things will flow well and you'll get those connections.
right, definitely. And because we, like you said, we are spiritual beings, but we have the physical body is that vessel. Like this is where we are. Like we are both sitting here on Earth in the physical body, speaking with one another. And it's I think that is often because it is our reality every day. Like we take it for granted and sort of don't really ground into it and feel it and almost, love and embrace it. I think it's about finding that balance. And it's like, the yin and yang of it in a way. And
Yeah.
really for me, I think early on I had trouble with that because I was living in a big city. I was living in Boston for a while. And
Mm,
when you're in a city, it's very there's a lot that's almost unnatural to it. And so
yeah.
I feel like, being in nature, it makes it much easier to feel that grounding and that the presence. And you can but as I was when I return back to cities now, I realize that even in cities, nature is available.
Yes,
You know,
definitely.
nature is as simple as taking, a deep breath, feeling oxygen, or
Yes, that
seeing
is true.
seeing birds and
just
feeling that.
noticing things. It's really important to, if you slow yourself down just a little bit, like you're talking about, you will notice different little things you wouldn't have before, even in the city, like you're talking about. And it's everywhere. And it's not even in the nature part. It could be something else. It could be you cross paths with somebody, you notice something about them, they say something to you, or you just look up at the sky, you know, that day and you just notice the clouds are different or something. And that comes in and that gives you that extra little knowing of, okay, I'm following something here. There's a little magic going on and they're trying to come in and give me some little inkling of a message. So I think we definitely get that a lot and can connect to it more. It's not like we have to go out and be in, you know, the forest every day and
Right.
take these long walks. I mean, that'd be great. I'm sure
I was
we
gonna say
all
it
would
would be
love to
nice.
have that life. I always dream of being like a writer with a little cabin somewhere. And,
Right.
you know, I'm just like, okay, when's my next book coming out? But honestly, we do have real life. So we have to figure out, how do we balance things out? How do we figure out the fun parts of life within our lives being crazy? And I think also it's perspective too.
Hmm.
It's like, how can you see it differently? I look at people differently, like, than maybe the norm. I always look at everybody like they are me. So they're a
Right.
version of me. They're a version of the source, right? So if they're struggling, I'm like, oh yeah, I probably struggled too, you
Right.
know?
Absolutely.
And whatever it may be, it's just like, it's always a reminder, oh yeah, I may have experienced that. I may have done that. Maybe I need to work on that. They're just other little reminders. I try not to go into this place of judgment and like picking things apart too much and over analyzing stuff, and just saying, okay, this is where they're at right now, and I have my own growth to do. You know, I'm on my own path, and maybe sometimes your paths will not cross. Even like, you may be on a completely different path, or you might meet people and then they go off your path.
Right.
So it's just part of that experience of, we come here in the physical plane to feel and sense this kind of environment, so we can learn from this. We're trying to learn this, even though we want to go back. We're like, okay, it sounds great over there. Maybe we should go back over there. This is here for a purpose, because we can't learn in that way on the other side. We
Right.
need to have the physical nature of things to really grow more. And we don't have all the emotions over there either. Like, we don't experience the sadness and things like that. So here we come here and we get to do those things, even though we think, why did we even sign up for that? But we do get to do those things, because ultimately, I feel like sadness and anger and all these different things we go through helps us to understand ourselves more, and like be more in our light, to ultimately be more in a state of love. Because if you go deep down into that, where else can you go? I mean, once you dove in there and you saw everything you need to see, it's like, okay, now maybe I don't want that anymore. Maybe I want to experience something else. It can be hard though, because you may go over things over and over, and
Right.
there's cycle of things. And I think, like, this year in particular, we've cycled through a lot of things, and are like, okay, when is this lesson going to be done? When is this lesson going to be done? Right.
Right.
But I think it's just showing us we need patience, and we need connections and understanding of each other.
Right. Absolutely. And you spoke to really the principles that I try and, live by as well in terms of, just really honing in on that interconnectivity that exists between us all, because we do all come from the same source and we're all, I really, something, I think it was Brene Brown I heard mention, uh, she was talking about how every single person, you know, in their way, in what they know, is doing the best they can. So there is no
Yeah.
need to judge. There's no need to,
Yeah.
it's, we're all dealt a different hand and experiencing different things. So it's, if we can be in a place of love for ourselves, that ultimately is going to help others be in a place of love as well. And, really hone in on that interconnectivity, because I think all of us just want what's best for us, what's best for humanity, and what's, you know, create a world that is, more loving and unified. And I think with what's going on right now, collectively, a lot of people have realized sort of what is it that matters in this world. It is those
Mhm.
connections. It is something deeper than this sort of external chase that I guess you could say, that
Mhm.
external conquest that humanity has sort of been living in for, you could say, thousands of years at this point. We've really compounded that foundation. But
Right.
and I think a lot of people are really tuning into that, but there is it goes sort of back to what we were talking about in terms of the healing. These expectations, these judgments we place on others is a lot of times just uh, when we see something we judge in another person. I think really what that is a call to look inward and see what is it about that person that is triggering something in me. Why am I feeling this way about that? So
Mhm.
there's it's almost a, if we can learn from our judgments and in expectations, we in attachments, attachments is such a huge one. uh,
Mhm.
we can really connect in with that love further. I mean, would could you speak to sort of these attachments and these
Mhm.
expectations, and what I mean, I feel like we all have, we even, on my path now, I still notice one of the great things about the spiritual practice is it's not like these things necessarily go away completely. It's just you become more mindfully aware of when you're having an attachment or having
Mhm.
an expectation. You learn to sort of unpack it more. But could you sort of speak to in what ways people can learn to let go of these, and how to uh, I would say nurture them, because I think that's what
Mhm.
they need.
Well, I think one of the things is we notice these things more now. We've obviously all opened up to it. It's more in the culture everywhere. Like we're talking about attachments, we're talking about judgments, all these different expectations.
Mhm.
One of the things that happens as we talk about that is we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm having something happen now. I have an expectation. There must be something wrong with me spiritually. I've been terrible today because I had an expectation.
Right.
So we're really hard on ourselves and we start to pick apart all these little things that are happening. And it's because we are aware. Obviously, we have raised our frequency. So we've gone into this other knowing and we have this love flowing through us. But the love that we need to continue to feed ourselves is just acceptance in every moment. And every day, like, what if we just got up every day and said, okay, whatever happened yesterday, it is gone. Today is a
Mm.
new day. Like you're born every day and you're born every day in whatever power you want to have. So it could be that today you set your intention. I'm going to experience infinite love today. Whatever it may be that you want to set, you just put that out there. And when you set that, you're releasing every time you do that. But it's just letting yourself, even if you drift a little bit and you start to feel that you have an attachment to something, you have something that's affecting you in a way, it's like dragging you down to where a place you don't want to go. It's just saying, you know what? I just had an experience. I
Mm.
just had an experience, a soul experience. And that's all it was. And it's kind of like when you're watching TV, which I don't even watch TV all the time, but if you're watching TV and regular TV, they have commercials. And
Mhm.
so what happens is we watch TV and we watch the commercials. And at the time, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe there's so many commercials on that I have to watch. And
Right.
I really want the show to come back on. But if you think about it, we don't remember days later all those commercials. We remember the bits and pieces that we got out of that show, or just that laughing, if we were laughing at the show, or whatever the experience was, if we were with somebody watching the show. So that's what life is like. We have these experiences. The expectations and the judgments and the attachments can go away because they can be like those commercials where we just kind of breeze by them and we briefly notice them. But then we
Mm.
say, that's not me. That's not a part of me. And today is a new day that I am born.
Right. I love that. I love that. And it's that acknowledgement, and that it goes back to that idea of trusting ourselves to say, okay, I know myself well enough to know that I am not an attachment I have. I am not
Mm-hmm.
a thought or a belief system that's ingrained in me. I am something more. And it is this spirit that we were talking about, more towards the beginning of the show, like we are this deeper entity, this deeper being, and we're we have so much beautiful love and energy that is within us. And I think defining ourselves by that energy and knowing that's who we are can really put us into this space of love and accepting and nurturing and just that mindful awareness and that loving awareness. And I really believe that is uh, what is going to be what creates a world that is really fueled by those principles. Because I think more people are becoming aware of that and really connecting with that within them. I wanted to ask about sort of the collective energy right now, because I mean, sometimes it feels pretty chaotic and turbulent, but I also do get this deeper sense of this love and
Mhm.
interconnectivity that people are tapping into. I do feel that growing. Like I feel it growing within myself. And
Mhm.
as I feel it growing within myself, I feel it growing within the collective as well.
Mhm.
I mean, do you have thoughts on the collective energy at the moment and sort of where we're at and what you see? Obviously, we don't know exactly what's going to
Mhm.
play out for everything. And there's a lot that's, I guess, up in the air. But what are your thoughts on the collective energy and sort of what is taking place?
I think there is a mix of things. I think there's a lot of, it's like if somebody took something and they stirred it up,
Hmm.
and then there was a lot of turbulence. So I feel
Uh-huh.
like that is the energy that we're feeling. So some of it feels good and some of it doesn't feel good, and so it's a mixture of fear and love all together. But I think what's really happening is everybody is looking at themselves through self-love more than anything, because of the fact that we are more isolated. It's giving people time to look within themselves to see what feels right and what maybe they want to focus on for themselves. Even though technically we're all connected and we want to have that connection, going through the self and finding that strong sense of purpose and what is connecting you here will then help you to go back out and connect to others. So it's just almost like a time of pausing, I think, and reflecting all the things that have happened in the last so many years and just other lifetimes, and how do we want to shed some things and move forward. I think it's also where we're going in, and as we're looking at ourselves, it's like if we heal what's within us, we heal the collective. And when other people are doing that same thing, you see, we're all in that intertwining of healing. So it's
Mm.
all happening. As I heal in me, I heal you. As you heal within you, you heal me. So it's back and forth. But see, because we're at all different levels of healing and where we are in our knowing and awareness, and whether we're in a certain dimension or acceptance, that's why we feel weird at times, because it's
Mm.
still reflecting back to us that, wait, the collective still has more work to do. We're not there. But always know that if you hold your space within that and you just keep holding it in the strength that you are, that will be the power of the collective. Even
Mm.
one person, it doesn't have to be everybody to feel that. It just needs one person to begin that, right? And
Mm.
that builds and grows. It's all about faith and believing what is true. If you know the truth is that we are all light, then carry that forward through everything that comes your way. And then as you do that, other people will tune into that frequency, because it is about energy. And they will grab onto that as well. When they are ready to hear it and feel it, they will. So I
Mm.
think as long as we keep standing in, I think what happens is sometimes we get off from being in that power and we start to feel like we need to fit in again, or like follow something. And it's because we get scared, because when we start to stand in that power, what happens? We stand alone a lot.
Mm.
We stand in front of others. Okay, I'm going to make a fool of myself and I'm going to say a
Right.
lot of strange things. And I'm going to tell everybody here that if you just have faith, miracles will happen everywhere. And then you'll have people that might go against that. And they'll say, yeah, but what about this? Or I don't think that's true. But what if you just held it anyway? And then you continue that path for your entire lifetime, as much as you could stay on that path. How much good would you bring to the world? Think of all the, great spiritual gurus and leaders who did that, who held that within them. And even now in our world are doing that. They are able to do that because they know why they're here. They know who they are. They don't let anybody else tell them differently. And there's different versions of that. You can go and you can see someone that has a certain cultural belief and they show that side of spirituality, right? And then you go to another part of the world and somebody else has a different version of that. And that's because we need to have different people and experiences to look towards based on where everybody is at and what they are drawn to energetically.
Right. That's so beautiful. And when you connect in with sort of that deeper purpose, like, and that's something that I feel like my purpose is connected to helping others find their own purpose and
Mm-hmm.
that light within them. Um, when you can hold yourself in that light, it's and you can do it and really feel what that brings. I think it does, I would say, motivate you and give yourself the trust to continue to hold yourself in that space. Because you're
Mm-hmm.
right, especially I've noticed upon reflection in the past times that I sort of exit that and like
Mm-hmm.
disconnect from it. It is because of it. A lot of times you are alone, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
fear in that. We're very much uh, a tribal, like we have tribalistic instincts in us.
Mm-hmm.
We're communal beings. We're meant to be, we are interconnected and meant to be walking each other home, hand in hand. It's meant to
Right.
be. Doing it alone can a lot of times feel, uh, it's almost, I feel like it's almost a paradox. Like it feels
Mm-hmm.
alone, but you know that you're interconnected. So you're never
Right.
truly alone in it. And um, I feel like that's truly what well, like experiencing that is what's going to, the like you were saying, create this world of love and peace. I mean, would you say we're in almost the early stages of transformation? I mean, if we look at
Mm-hmm.
transformation on the individual level, a lot of times it does start with sort of turbulence. It starts with almost what feels like chaos and a
Right.
breaking down of what we thought to be true. So, do you think would you say we're in the early stages of transformation?
I think we may be further than the early stages in
Mm,
actuality. I think what happens is the beginning stages of transformation we don't always notice.
mm,
And it's kind of like we're in a coma state in a way. We're not aware of it as much and it's happening in some kind of subconscious way. Things are shifting within us. And so I think we're more in the middle of it now. It has different waves of coming through, though. So I see that we have another big wave of transformation that has not come through yet. And this is the one that will greatly shift a lot of the collective consciousness. It's going to change things in a way that it won't be the same anymore. It already isn't, but it'll be even more. It'll be more elevated. It'll be more of a free choice of, I want to have a life where I don't have to feel so overwhelmed with things. I want to have more time away from the busyness of life. I want to take time to just breathe and just be in that place of enjoyment. Because what is the point if you go through your whole life and you just accomplish a bunch of things, but you don't enjoy as much? It's kind of like if you work too many hours and then you never take a vacation. And
right.
then one day you get sick and you're like, okay, why didn't I ever take a vacation? So we just need to take more time. I think some of our shifting is about that quieting down, but it's also about who are we in this life? Do we want to bring in something else that we haven't done before? Is there something else that we haven't tapped into for our abilities and what our paths are? Maybe we're already on that path, but maybe there's something more, right? There's
Mm,
always more expansion. There's always more growth. There's always more understanding. but it's where you want to be. You get to choose. You get to write the story that you want. Whatever you choose, your soul is picking things along the way. Some things are more in your awareness that are happening, and other things are kind of deeper within you, but it's still getting you to the same point of love. It's always coming back to that. So when you think about what you want to do, does it reflect the love you want to feel inside?
Mm, right. And I think that's beautiful. And I definitely feel you mentioned sort of the next wave, the next
Mhm.
frequency that's to come. I've definitely, uh, it's hard to put into words. I've definitely felt that like there isn't almost a shift that is coming in a sense. And it's obviously impossible to put a timetable on it, but I sort of
Mhm.
I feel it within me that I sort of have an understanding of what this shift will feel like for individuals throughout the collective
Mhm.
and what the collective is going to move into, and I guess how we organize ourselves and how we implement it in different physical forms is going to be just something that's connected with purpose, something that's connected with these deeper principles. And um, you have to sort of exit the logic of the mind and the rational. I need the, like we talked about, needing the answers to X, Y, and Z. And it's almost trusting that feeling to evolve and grow and
Mhm.
learn. And it's I feel like we're in a very beautiful time to be alive, to witness it, and to take part in sort of this expansion and evolution. Because I think, like you mentioned earlier, we all really have chosen to be here, and like
Mhm.
we're here for a reason, not just to be like, what is that reason? Something I talk about with others often is like, what is that reason? Like I think
Mhm.
everybody individually, that purpose is going to be in different forms, but it's all
Mhm.
connected to that light, into that expansion, into that growth. And um, I think as we continue individually, it'll just continue collectively as well. It's very much a domino effect in that way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about while you were talking. I was thinking of the domino effect and the ripple effect and those kinds of things that we talk about. Because really what happens is, as we have certain people beginning to shift and be aware and go into that level of love energy, then at some point it just has that movement that happens really fast. It just rolls into the next thing, and we almost even notice it. It just happens overnight. Maybe we just wake up one day and we're in this new space, and then everybody's in that new space. So I think that's how it's going to happen. I think we're just all going to kind of hold on to each other more, and whoever is shifting more towards the end, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when somebody's shifting or bringing in love towards themselves. It's just whenever they're ready, then everybody will shift together at that
Mm,
time. It's kind of like you don't leave a person behind. You kind of come together and you make sure everybody gets to that place, right?
right,
So ultimately, even though we have soul groups, we all are connected as one big soul group consciousness, that
right,
collective consciousness.
absolutely. Um, so Pam, we're about at an hour, which is
Hmm.
amazing because this conversation has flown by, and I feel like uh, you know, we're really coming from a similar place in the sense, and have this, connected to this light. And, is there any other sort of reflective thoughts on what we've talked about in terms of, maybe connecting with purpose, or what something you would like to leave, listeners reflecting on and thinking about, or, I guess anything that comes to
Hmm.
mind, comes to the heart that, you feel would like to leave with them.
I think I would like to leave the thought that if you have something in you that has been holding you back from being your true self, there's something you've been wanting to try, there's some new part of your life that you want to begin to follow, I would like everyone that's listening to begin to visualize and breathe in the energy of shifting to that new place of who you really are. And let go of old identities and old beliefs and just say, what if it is possible?
It's truly beautiful. That's truly beautiful. And, as you're saying that, I was thinking it within myself. And, it is possible. It is absolutely possible. And not only possible, but inevitable in due time, I think, for everybody. So, uh, Pam, I would love if you could, where would you, I'd love to send the listeners like your way. If like, I don't know if you want to
Mm-hmm.
tell them where to find you, whether it be on social media or any websites, or where they can sort of go and, connect with you and interact with you further. Because, I've taken so much from this conversation, being a part of it. And I'd love to be able to, have the listeners connect with you further.
Well, they can go to my website at pambarosh.com. And then I also have social media. So I have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook that they can check out. I have different posts there. I try to put little positive messages, sometimes channeled messages, and other little images and things. And so if they go into my website and sign up for my newsletter, they're going to get a lot of different messages from Spirit. And I do sometimes do meditations and classes through Zoom. So if you get on there, you'll find out about things that are coming up.
All right, awesome. And I'll put the links to all those in the episode description, so people can just scroll on down, give it a click, and it's right there. So awesome. Well, Pam, thank you again so much for coming on the show, taking the time to be here and have this wonderful chat. And I'd love to have you back on sometime in the future. I feel like this is really free flowing. We're both
Mm-hmm.
uh, coming from a similar place energetically, and it just felt very
Mm-hmm.
natural. So I'd love to have you back on, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to, join the show.
Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot. I like going to the fifth dimension,
Yes, absolutely.
the heart space.
The fifth dimension, the heart space is
Yeah.
the place to be always, I've found, which is, it's funny. I named this show the fifth dimension. I feel like before I actually had an intuitive understanding what the fifth dimension was, but it was like what I want it to be. And then
Interesting.
it brought me there, which is kind of nuts.
Uh-huh.
So, um, awesome. All right. We
Awesome.
can,
Thank you.
of course.